Mr. Secretary, the USDA is making a big move here. You're toward the end of your move to Kansas City. How's that feel?
Well, it feels great. Obviously, have a location determined that we believe really works for ERS and NIFA. I just want to tell you, the Kansas City metropolitan community just went over the top on this. I want to thank them for their interest. We had 138 expressions of interest. We did a really had a accounting consultant to weed all those down, and Kansas City, Missouri came out on top, and great property. We think it will serve USDA. The good news is it's a good deal for the taxpayers as well. So it's great property, and the people who are already here are loving Kansas City.
What about the people who decided not to join us here in Kansas City?
Well, again, we wanted to provide them opportunities. You know, people, move is hard, move is changing, and for various reasons, they may have kids in school or parents there, and that was their choice. We offered it. We would have been happy for everyone to come, and but the good news is there are more jobs available here for people in this area. We had a job fair last week, an expo, and it was overwhelming interest. Our universities participated, and the quality and the quantity of applicants was exceeded our expectations.
Now, I know you're going on a site visit today to see the buildings. What are you expecting to see when you get there?
Well, again, the build out will take a few months, obviously, to retrofit it for our needs. But we want to just see the location. I think it's, I hear great things about it, and see, we're not really moving from Pennsylvania Avenue, apparently. We're going to be right on Pennsylvania Avenue again. But I just want to, get a feel for it. I want to visit with the people who've already come out here with those two agencies, and also the people at the Beacon facility that have welcomed them with great open arms and hospitality here as they are temporarily in those quarters, and will be for a few months before we get this facility up and going.
Now, we know that the USDA focuses a lot on jobs similar to those coming to Kansas City that are often done inside offices, but they really are a main support for the farmers across our country. Those agriculture jobs, there's some concern over those when you look at the skyrocketing farm bankruptcies. I mean, in September, we saw it jump 24%. What do you say to farmers who just want to farm?
Well, let's tell the story about bankruptcies first, though. While it seems to have jumped 24%, it's still only about 2.5%, which is really pretty good historically in that way. We look at those numbers on a very regular basis. In fact, I'm going to the Fed here at Kansas City, which is known as the Ag Fed this morning, visiting with a group of bankers, getting the information from on the ground about what they see in the Midwest and Kansas and around here about the farm stress and debt. Obviously, economically, interesting though, farm income is up this year. It's up 5%. So I think a lot of times the amount, the number, when you grow a small number a little bit more, it seems like a large percentage, and people get very dramatic about that. But the farm bankruptcies are not as severe as those kind of numbers of 24% increase. No doubt there's stress out there. There has been stress based on over 5 or 6 years of declining prices. Many people like to attribute that just to the trade or tariff issues. That's not the case. These prices peaked in 12 and 13 and been going down for several years. And it's tough on the farm, but farmers know it's been tough all their life in their careers. And they're resilient, they're tough, and they're productive, and they're going to keep going. The market facilitation programs have helped, and that has also helped farm income to rise this year.
Now, I know for lifelong farmers, generational farmers, they understand that there's going to be good years, there's going to be bad years, but what about new farmers? What are you seeing from people who want to get into the farming industry?
That's the toughest, actually, when you don't have an opportunity to build up your equity during those good years and you get in starting with a bad cycle, low cycle, then it's really tough, and some of those are really stressed. That's where we see more of the people choosing to get out or exit farming in that way. Many of them, those young farmers got in during that peak of prices and 10, 11, 12 in those areas, and thinking that it was extremely profitable, and they've seen it go down since that time in that way. That's why the president has understanding with the trade disruptions, understanding that farmers would be impacted because they're so productive. We have to export because we produce more than we can consume. That's why he authorized $12 billion last year and $16 billion this year for our farmers who are stressed out over the lack of the ability to market their crops in a normal way.
Let's talk about that $16 billion number. It looks like that's 40% of farmers' profits in 2018.
Our numbers say probably our indication from our economist at USDA is not quite 40%, but it's going to be a significant portion. There's no doubt about that. Not all $16 billion goes. It's a food production or a food purchasing situation as well as trade, marketing, promotion that way. But about over $14 billion is going to go directly to farmers in that area. And it's a significant part of their income as well as crop insurance payments. You know, this has not been the best year weather-wise for farming either, and that's the normal safety net we have. So both from crop insurance and the market facilitation program probably would maybe get up to that 40%.
Let's talk about the weather. Here in Missouri and in Kansas, we've seen kind of extremes on both ends. Both states were in drought emergencies for a very long time.
Right.
We saw incredible flooding, in our area over the spring and the summer. Farmers were unable to get seed in the ground.
Right.
How do you talk to them about climate change and the impact that it's going to have on the future of agriculture?
Well, we talk to them about what we do now. What can we do, now? And obviously, flooding and droughts both are cyclical. I say, Carolyn, I grew up on a farm in Georgia. I remember a severe drought in 1954 that almost put my dad out of business. In 1994, 40 years later, we had a major flood there in a flat area of middle Georgia there that damaged crops and everything else. And then in 2018, we had a hurricane there that blew down things. So farmers know that weather is always a risk, and they deal with that. Whether that's climate change in 1954 or 2018, we don't know, but what do we do about that? The safety net programs we have on prevented plant that we had this year, we exercised that. That helped a lot of folks survive. It's never going to make people whole. Just like when we have a car accident, you don't ever feel like you get back the same deal you had prior to that. We're not making money on insurance, but the crop insurance program is the foundational safety net with which farmers participate in order to manage their risks. So the other type of thing we're doing is smart, sustainable farming practices with cover crops and those kind of things, helping farmers to be part of the carbon sink rather than carbon emissions, and helping to continue to educate farmers about they can build up carbon in their soil, and it's also good for productivity. So those are the kind of things that we're out here teaching and helping people understand all along.
What does the discussion, you just mentioned several programs, but what does the discussion inside the USDA look like when you talk about climate change and the impact that it'll have, 5, 10, 20 years down the line? Well,
again, it talks about what is the science that we know. Many people have tried to project what this is. If you go back several years, we were supposed to be flooded now in that kind of way. So what are the projections of climate change? What farmers have to do with is the here and now and plan for the future. What we have people investigating, contrary to what the media likes to report, is that we have people researching climate issues and CO2 emissions and everything, and how we can be smarter farmers scientifically, not based on an ideology that the sky is falling in that way. So farmers are very practical people. They want to know what they can do to help their crops. That's cover crops, that's no-till, those kind of things, that they can be part of the solution of CO2 emissions and what goes forward. But we try to have it science-based and not emotionally based.
Absolutely. The idea of corn and soybeans suffering from this trade issue is a big topic here in the Midwest, big topic in my family. So I'm curious, is there a light at the end of this tunnel when it comes to the tariff discussions and the trade war?
I believe there's a light at the end of the tunnel. As you know, we're in discussions with China now. The president has continued to address them. He's used tariffs as a tool to bring China to the table. This trade war just didn't start 2 years ago. We've been in a trade war for China for 20 years since they entered the WTO, and actually they've been winning. They've been winning and growing their economy by, again, the theft of technology, even agricultural technology from the United States, and performing in not a good actor basis that way. The president has called the question on that, And if China wants to reform the way they do business and treat our farmers and producers fairly, he's all ready to get that done. And that's what we're trying to persuade them and communicate to them right now, that we can't go forward the way it's gone on for 20 years. Yes, we enjoy their consumption there, but I would submit that we probably got too dependent on a country that was then doing ill things there to get other technology away from the United States, not just in agriculture, but throughout our economy. And we've seen that. A $350 billion trade deficit with China is not something that's sustainable year in and year out. That's what President Trump is concerned about.
Let's talk about President Trump and the support that he has with farmers. You know, in 2016, we saw a lot of agricultural areas come up and vote for President Trump. Are you seeing that same support when you go out and talk to farmers now?
Look, economic stress is painful. Let's just face that. But most farmers understand, and most politicians on both sides understand, something had to be done with China. And the president understood that farmers would be the tip of the spear regarding the pain of change, of persuading China to change. And that's why he authorized the $12 billion last year and the $16 billion this year. But the fact is, it had to change. The good news is, farmers understand they're long-term players. They don't plant in August and hope to harvest in September. They understand there's got to be a game plan going forward. They've got to make those, they've got to terrace those fields, all the kind of things that do that. And sometimes that costs money up front in order to have better crops later on. That's essentially what President Trump is trying to do, is to get this thing restructured, reset in the relationship with China, as well as what he's directed me to do is go all around the world and sell stuff. We had good news from Brazil on their TRQ on wheat, which is big news for Kansas. We've had great news from China this week over letting our poultry back in. We're in India, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines, those kind of countries. We're going to spread the bounty around the world from U.S. producers.
And just one final question as we're running out of time here. I know that you and the president have a lot of work to do when it comes to trade and getting agriculture staying steady in the United States, but the elephant in the room here is what the impeachment hearings are doing with the productivity in the White House. What is your take on these hearings, especially with the second round of public testimony today?
Well, if you were in the White House, you wouldn't realize from the president's actions that anything's going on. He's doing his job. He was in Louisiana last night. He travels. He met with the Turkish president yesterday. And so these things go on. What happens on the Hill is not his responsibility. The one thing that needs to happen on the Hill that hadn't happened is the USMCA trade agreement passed. And that's what we're calling for, is to pass the USMCA trade agreement. While we're up there with the impeachment shenanigans, we're not taking care of the people's business there. The president obviously has given his opinion about what he thinks these are, as a witch hunt. But what we really need to be doing is helping the U.S. economy, not just agriculture, but the manufacturing economy, employment, health, safety, environmental issues that are better in the USMCA agreement and in NAFTA. That's what the president committed, and that's what's happening. What I see is him continuing to do his job and do it very well.
Wonderful. With the last 30 seconds, anything we didn't touch on you'd like to add?
No, again, I just want to thank the whole area of Kansas and Missouri and receiving this. This is a big deal. I had no idea that many people would view it as negatively as they did. I think this is exactly the right move, that we need to help disperse U.S. government out into the places where it understands. And agriculture certainly is better understood in Kansas and Missouri than it is in Washington, D.C.
Secretary, thank you so much. I really appreciate all your time.
Thank you very much.